Good morning and welcome to this ordinary meeting of the hearings panel on the 31st of July. I'll open us up with a karakia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia te here tangata, karongo te pō, karongo te ao, haumie, huie, tai ki e. Good morning, everybody. A few bits of housekeeping. Just that the meeting is being live streamed. So when you're speaking for any guests, just make sure that you turn your mic on in advance. We've got no apologies for this meeting, and the order of business will be as per the agenda. Are there any interests to declare? I will just note for item 6.2 that I do live on one of the streets affected by the road closure, but given the relatively small nature of it, it does not amount to a interest or a conflict, but just to note the minor interest there. And we'll go straight into public forum, and we've got Bruce Yelverton on the proposed layout changes for Strathaven Place. Morena, Bruce. We'll hand over to you. You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. This will take about 2 minutes, I'm sure.
Easy.
Yeah. Hey, look, thanks for your time, everybody. It's great to be here and have an opportunity to talk to this. I actually made a written submission on the 4th of the 7th, which was sent via email. Just like to point out a slight error in that on point 6, where I said I would prefer to have yellow lines. Actually, would prefer not to have yellow lines, but you probably picked that up. Hey, look, I guess my point is that I'd like to make is I live on that driveway that those lines are going to be on both sides of. There's 6 houses up that ridge where I live, and we've all got limited parking up there. Not that it actually gets used very often, but it's quite nice to have the option if you have guests or something like that to park a bit closer to your driveway. Ironically, the other day I've been getting some gravel put up on a lower drive where we park a couple of cars, and I drove out and there's one of the contractors had his van parked right to the left of our driveway, which is right where some of those yellow lines will be, closer to the intersection. And I thought these are good examples. I don't often get a car parked there at all, and yeah, I just swung around it. There seemed to be plenty of room for me to get around the van and get up to the intersection. Right on that intersection, on the left-hand side in front of it, there's a driveway, so you can't park there anyway. I walked it, I think it's about 7 or 8 metres before the intersection, so I don't think you'd have yellow lines on there anyway, but that creates a bit of a buffer for people driving closer to it. Look, in some ways it would be an advantage to me to have yellow lines there. You know, if I'm backing my camper down, great, no cars will ever be there. Experience too many issues at all, if any. That road's a quiet cul-de-sac. I don't know how many houses there are up there, probably about 30 or 40, so it's a traffic area. But sure, French Hay is a bit more traffic coming up Dodson Valley and around the corner. But again, I don't know if having yellow lines there will actually create any benefit in stopping, being able to be safe at that intersection. So I guess that's what I'd like to say, just from a practical perspective. It's quite handy having an area down there, for people to park if they want to. I'm not sure I've ever used it, or any of my guests have ever used it. We've got a little bit of extra parking, but I kind of feel that once the yellow lines go in there, then they'll probably never be gone. So I kind of wonder whether we just leave it as it is, because it's not really a big issue from my perspective, but obviously it is for somebody else. But from people up our driveway, I don't think it's a big issue, and we're right there. That's about it.
Thanks, Bruce. Open for any questions from hearings panel members. I'll ask staff the same question, but you live there, so you'll probably have the best sense. Is in terms of distance from your driveway to the intersection?
I would say it's about 20 metres, roughly. Yeah, maybe 15 to 20 metres. So we come out, there's a little bit of an area there where you could probably park one car if you wanted to. That van that was parked there a couple of weeks ago is the first time I've actually ever seen a car parked there.
Parked on sort of the intersection?
Yeah, right on the intersection. parked on the, come down our driveway on the right-hand side. But yeah, it's a little bit further away from the intersection. So yeah, I just don't really think it's a big issue. Personally, I just think, like I said, once they're there forever probably. So.
And so is your concern more on the uphill side than the...
No, I don't kind of have a concern on either side, to be honest. It's just never really been an issue, but I think it's quite handy to have the option to park down there if you want to, if somebody wants to. So we've got 6 houses up our driveway, which is along a ridge line, so there's not a lot of parking. Everybody's got about 2 parks each, I suppose, maybe 3 at the best. But yeah, anyway, it's just thought I'd come along and just I don't know if it's a big issue or not, but either way, it's not the end of the world for me, but I kind of prefer to leave it as it is.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
All right, okay, great. Have a great day.
That is all we have for public forum. So we'll roll into the confirmation of minutes. Councillor Anderson, I think you were the one in attendance. Are you happy to move those? Yes. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Hodgson. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. That is carried, and we roll into the substantive reports for this agenda, starting with road naming. Report for Marsden Park Stage 12. Bernadette. Good morning. We'll take the report as read, but any key bits you want to highlight?
Right. No, it's pretty straightforward to this one, thankfully.
Quick question from me, which is just what is the background for Monterey?
Monterey refers to trees that were planted in Isle Park, Monterey. There's a cypress, different pines, and they were planted by the Marsden family.
Thank you very much.
Happy to move.
Moved, Councillor Hodgson. Seconded, Councillor Anderson. I will put those resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
That is carried. Thank you very much, Bernadette.
Thank you.
Which brings us to 6.2, temporary road closure, the spectacle. Gina, Lyndon, double act. I do see we have spectacle friends, so hi spectacle friends.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass over to Gina, who's pulled all of this together for us.
Morena Chairperson and councillors, the report before you is an application for a temporary road closure to host the 2025 spectacle. From the success of the 2024 event and the organiser doing a really good job of engagement and letter dropping, there has been of businesses and residents of the proposed closure. There is no report. We have received no feedback, and we take the report as read.
Wonderful. Any questions?
So does this one differ in any way to the last one we had?
Through the chair, slightly. There are a couple of different roads that are being closed at different times from last year.
And last one, just from the last experience, did we receive any complaints, or is there any information around the economic benefits or how awesome it was?
Through the chair, the last year, because the event was new, there was a bit of pushback about the event in general before it, and then after the event there was no negative feedback about the closure or about the impact that it had on the CBD, other than it brought a lot of people into town and that it was really enjoyed by the public.
Any questions, James?
I think you've just answered my question, which really was we had that pushback before the event just from a few businesses, and I was interested if I think you've partially answered that, if they gave any feedback after the event in terms of some of the negative impacts they thought they might experience, whether those were experienced or whether there were also any positive benefits on those that were initially a little bit reluctant to support this.
Through the chair, if there was any feedback from those initial people that were opposed to it, it wouldn't have come back to us.
Just kind of slightly off, and I'm probably going to be asking this a lot of papers. Just given now we've changed our climate change targets, climate impacts generally, sometimes it seems like a cut and paste, and I'd like to see a little bit more. I'll be bringing this up as far as what kind of benefits, even if you're pushing a little bit as far as, I don't see how that could fit into here, but I'd like to be some more thinking, giving councils change around what we're doing in climate change. So yes, more a comment than a question.
Any further questions? Looking for someone to move. Councillor Hodgson, seconded Councillor Anderson. Any discussion, debate? I'll just quickly say that I really think this is a testament to really solid engagement and to answer the question through the City Centre Business Forum and a range of the engagements we've had with local businesses around that event is that the story from many of the people who were initially hesitant has become a much more positive one, and I think there's real excitement for this. But I think closing this many streets in the city centre and not having any feedback is a true testament to the hard work that's gone into pre-engagement. I will put those resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those resolutions are carried. Traffic and parking bylaw schedule updates.
The proposed changes in this report include minor safety and parking improvements and the vesting of new subdivision developments. All feedback has been considered and summarised in the report, and we take the report as read and welcome questions.
We are open for questions. Might try to step through relatively chronologically in terms of the report. Any questions on those Niall Street and Niall Street West fire hydrants? Strathaven Place.
Oh, sorry.
Get in there.
What are objects or other things on the roads? Just an example, so purpose of the report. Control parking of vehicles and other traffic on any road, and for any objects or other things on the road, just out of curiosity.
Very first bullet point 1, final end of that sentence for number 1 in the report under purpose of report.
So other objects on the road could things like curb extensions, central islands, solid central islands, more of an object than a marking in that sense.
And sorry, I did underline some things. With the fire hydrants on Niall Street, where did we receive the requests to discourage vehicles? It's on page 27.
Through the chair, we received one from a business on Niall Street West, and we've also had requests from regulatory internally.
And also, it's mentioned we often already ticket these vehicles, so I'm assuming they shouldn't be parking there anyway. And
Through the chair, correct. It's illegal to park within 30 centimetres of a fire hydrant.
I'm assuming with the fire hydrant, it's slightly hard to tell from the maps, but they're the classic, like next to the trees along there where it looks like a park, but is not.
Yes, or they're slightly further away from the tree, but if you park next to the tree, you're probably within 30 centimetres of it and you're parking on the tree roots.
Thank you. Any questions on Strathaven? Just one from me, which is around in terms of the determination of the length of the yellow lines there. How was that assessment made for this proposal?
Through the chair, we went for a site visit. We got the request from a member of the public. We went for a site visit and determined that it is illegal to park within 6 metres of an intersection anyway. That driveway on the very corner does put cars back about 6 metres, but if you're parked in that curved bit, cars are having to cross the centre line to approach the giveaway limit line. And if there are cars parked on that straight bit up the hill slightly, you are on the wrong side of the road coming into a blind corner. You can't see around that corner to traffic coming up the hill from Dodson Valley. And the length of those lines up the hill further were to balance leaving some on-street parking, but also giving some space between that blind corner and intersection.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really trying to understand, because just looking at a map, it did look like those lower no stopping lines were that you'd struggle to park there without being within 6 metres of the intersection. So that the primary technical legislative change, I guess, we're making here is more in that uphill space, as well as reinforcing what is probably the most forgotten and overlooked parking rule in this country.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Is if we put those yellow lines in the upper portion and without marking in the lower portion, then the assumption is there's no yellow lines there. Therefore, we should be able to park in that space. So, in putting the higher level yellow lines, which stops people being on the wrong side of the road when they don't have the visibility around that bend, it's more that issue than those vehicles exiting that driveway.
Just in terms of the feedback, I guess in opposition of the yellow lines, but highlighting speed as a primary issue there. Do we have any data around speeds in that area, or any? Do officers view speed along that stretch as an issue that will need to be addressed in future?
It's not something I'm aware of. It hasn't been raised.
It was raised in the feedback.
Oh, for the speed of people coming down the hill. Yep. I'm not sure if we've got speed counts in those areas, but we can certainly look into and establish that.
Other questions, including on what is next down the line? Harper Street, Montebello Avenue, Chapel Lane? No? Then I'll... Oh, Councillor Anderson.
So Montebello and Chapel, they seem quite straightforward, and it's just a subdivision and shouldn't have any issues around that one as far as feedback's concerned, given no one lives there.
Through the chair, yeah, this is it's interesting because the feedback is done as part of the resource consent process. Well, it's not really feedback in terms of we seek feedback from the people that don't live there. It's more it goes through the process of the NLTDM, sorry, the Land Development Manual, and it's safety audited, and it's gone through that resource consent process, and that's what kind of approves the layout, and then this is giving legal authority to those lines.
I'm happy to move these resolutions. Someone to second? Yeah. Councillor Anderson. Any discussion or debate?
I think just a quick comment, because I know we had someone come in and speak to one of these on Strathaven. Having had yellow lines put outside my own driveway and being part of the big discussion with lots of different neighbours, just to acknowledge that there are often a range of views. Some people, it can be really disruptive when cars are parked in certain places, and it's really make or break for them. For other people, they don't see the problem. Maybe they're kind of ambivalent to it, but it seems like a waste of council's money to go and be putting paint everywhere. I think the feedback that I got the most was, why is it so hard for council to just go out and get this done to make a difference for those that really do care? And it seems like what you guys are proposing is really proportionate to the issue that some residents are facing.
Thanks, James, and completely echo those comments. I will put those resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those resolutions are carried, which brings us to Bridge to Better bylaw changes, which we have a PowerPoint for, and the wonderful Reese Palmer joining us via Zoom. I will hand over to staff to present.
Morena, everyone. I'd just like to briefly summarise the 30-odd page report and I guess highlight what I believe are the key items that we've had feedback on. And just to highlight that this is about making legal the things like the pedestrian crossings, the no stopping lines, the one-way lanes and the parking controls for Bridge Street that has had considerable sort of governance feedback along the way through the Central City Task Force. Earlier in the week, I shared an addendum to the report with a couple of extra changes, and I just wanted to check that members of the hearing panel have received that, and I'll just quickly summarise those before I go through and summarise the key points in the report. So in that addendum, we suggested an additional change to the loading zone outside the Gravity Bike Shop on the corner of Elmer Street and Bridge Street. In the report, it's proposed as a loading zone. We propose to then, after 10 a.m. in the morning, have that be a P10 to encourage greater turnover. We also received some feedback from one of the taxi companies after we finalised the report. And there's quite a bit of feedback within that taxi submission, and one of the things that they highlighted that it's likely that the 9 p.m. restriction that a lot of the PSV taxi stands has currently in the CBD was a hang up from the previous late night shopping on Friday night, and they requested that the start time for those taxi stands is a wee bit earlier at 6 p.m. and I think that will support the hospitality and makes good use of those spaces when they're not really being used by the retail. So there are two additional changes to the report that has been circulated. I'll now just quickly go through what I believe are the three, big substantive moves that we're making on Bridge Street in the bylaw space. So the first one is the 3 laneways that go from the 3 parking squares onto Bridge Street. We're making those one way, and that is to effectively give more space to people being able to park in the parking squares and then walk in a much more orderly and a nicer environment than currently exists from those parking squares onto Bridge Street. At the moment, a lot of them have got very narrow pedestrian ways with 2 lanes of traffic, which the 2 lanes are very, very tight and squeezed in. So we're going to take the opportunity, or propose to take the opportunity through the Bridge Street project to make those one way. And that, I guess, highlights the fact that we really want people to be coming into those parking squares from the ring route with the lesser of the access into the CBD, and give some space to people to be able to walk from those parking squares to Bridge Street. I think we've talked about it in the task forces, giving more of a red carpet treatment from the parking squares into Bridge Street. So that's one of the key moves that I wanted to highlight. The next one is that we are proposing to change the default maximum parking duration from P120, so that's 2 hours at the moment on Bridge Street, down to P60, 1 hour. This is to encourage greater turnover on Bridge Street because we are reducing the number of car parks on Bridge Street to have space for more greenery, more people-focused space. And it acknowledges that we've got 3 parking squares within a very short distance that have, hundreds of 3-hour car parks effectively. So we do have within the city, a broad range of both short and longer term spaces, and we think that the spaces on Bridge Street should be prioritise for higher turnover. So that's the second big move in my view. And then probably the third big move, which we don't do a lot of in the CBD, is adopting a philosophy of making a lot of our car parks multi-use. Now, I talked earlier about that one at Gravity, where we're going to have it loading zone in the morning, and then P10 after 10 a.m. to support the businesses that you're in retail and in service. So we're doing that in a lot of the spaces, a lot of the loading zone spaces and PSV spaces, making them multi-use. We're going to have to be really clear with how we sign that so that we don't confuse people. I think the signs we've got at the moment are not ideal. We've had that feedback, and yeah, so we'll be working pretty hard to make sure that's really understandable. And I expect that, possibly from some of the people that run courier companies, they might be initially frustrated, and there'll be a bit of education required to make sure that that's successful. But we're just trying to make the best use of all of that space on Bridge Street by making them multi-use. So I'll leave that there and happy to take questions. And we've got the maps stitched together. So if we've got specific questions, I can hopefully ask Gina to put the appropriate map up and we can talk to it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rhys. Open for questions. James?
Kia ora, Rhys, and everyone else. First question was just around the one-way entry into the parking squares. It makes sense to me. I'm just curious, have we done traffic modelling on the remaining exits to those squares onto primarily the ring road, and just what we expect the impact to be in terms of congestion or difficulty for people exiting those squares, particularly at busy times?
Through the chair, no, we haven't done specific traffic modelling, but we do know there's sufficient capacity at the likes of the Achilles Ave and the entrance ways, those key entrance ways that have turning bays onto the ring route. I think it's fair to say that the current one-way lanes are very narrow and have site deficiencies and turning deficiencies getting in and out of them. And I think will be a much safer arrangement for people to come and go from those key access points out onto the ring route where we have a flush median and a right turn bay off Rutherford Street or Collingwood Street. So no, we haven't done specific traffic modelling, but we're comfortable there is sufficient capacity at those access ways for them to work safely and efficiently.
Second question was just in regards to the higher turnover parking on Bridge Street. I'm curious what sort of activities we would be expecting those spaces to cater to. I'm thinking of the P60, and also what consideration was given to other times, like was P30 considered, and why did we land at a P60, I suppose?
We did consider P90, so 1.5 hours, and P60, and we are proposing P60, and that was really just to strike a balance between what's there now and something that will still be useful. And we don't want to rush people when they come into the CBD. If they come into the CBD to do their primary activity and then grab a coffee as well, that's kind of what we want to encourage, rather than just coming in and doing their primary activity and then feeling like the parking restriction means they've got to move on. So we didn't want to make it as short as P30 because of that. So that's why we are recommending P60. But alongside those P60s, we do have a handful of P10s scattered throughout the street, and they're typically located, outside the kebab shop, outside the coffee shops, outside Gravity, where I know they, have customers that quickly drop off the bike and then carry on or go there to grab a shuttle. So we do have those shorter durations scattered amongst the street, as well as the P60s proposed.
Thank you.
A question from me, just in terms of the Montgomery Square access way. Can we map it?
Yeah, I think that's on the first slide, Gina.
I just wanted to see if our technology would work. You've got the button, yes. Yeah, so just in terms of that laneway, is what I'm seeing correct in that essentially we're just paving over what is currently the entry side to that. So if you're coming off of Bridge Street into Montgomery Square, that we're retaining the exit lane as is and just paving over the entry lane.
Yeah, that's correct. So the proposal is to retain the curb line on the western side. So no change to that curb line and footway, but adding a footway on the eastern side, and you can see there those 5 circles are trees, just to widen and make that make a footway on both sides of the laneway.
And I guess just in relation to that, have we modelled in terms of the current site angles through there?
Yeah, so I mean, all of these lanes are rather restricted by the buildings right up to the corner, which is partly the reason why the other laneway is one way in. So this one here, we'll be designing it such that it's quite narrow and a very slow speed zone, so that as cars are exiting, they're travelling at an appropriate speed for coming on to Bridge Street, because of that site restriction at the corner. And then similarly, the reason why we have changed Elmer Street at the other end of the project, maybe Gina, if you could just go to the 3rd slide. We have that one way in because we didn't have the width because of the veranda and a bunch of other constraints to offset the laneway from the buildings to be more central. And that made coming out with the sightline restriction at the corner, we thought that would be too unsafe, which is why this one is one way in. It's the substantive reason why we have the 2 different directions.
And again, with Elmer Street, essentially that lane location, is that just adopting what's currently the exit lane? We're not shifting that corridor at all?
This particular one is shifting over a fraction because at the moment that exit lane is hard against the building. So we are shifting this one over a fraction.
Yeah, I'm just looking, I'm looking at what appears to be maybe a 30 centimetre curb of a footpath on the western side there.
I think it's a wee bit wider than that. I haven't got the exact dimension with me, unfortunately.
And then just in terms of the Montgomery Square exit, and I guess the wider sort of pedestrian relationship between the different laneway entrances and exits. I see on the Montgomery one, the giveaway sign we're putting on the southern side of the footpath is just, in terms of functional feel from these changes, if I'm walking along Bridge Street, once all of these changes are in, am I going to feel like I have the right of way to walk across? And if I'm driving out, what am I feeling in terms of who I have to give way to?
Yeah, so if you're driving out, you'll be coming up a ramp up onto the flat footpath that we have on Bridge Street. So, and I'd need to double check exactly where we've got the limit line, but my expectation is that you'll be the exiting vehicle will be giving way to pedestrians there. That's something that I think you've highlighted a good point, that those tactiles might give cause for confusion there. So we might need to just look at how we've got that exactly set up. But either way, I guess we need that giveaway control. Exactly where it acts is probably the key point that we might need to just have a close look at and make sure we've got that right.
Yeah, I guess my wider sort of design feedback around these traffic control devices would be looking at the situation that currently exists along Hardy Street, where you've got the at-level courtesy crossings running the east-west length, but the signage leaves it unclear as to you'll have many cars that will stop prior to that raised crossing and many that will roll up onto it. And in terms of sight lines for both pedestrians and motorists, it can be very challenging. You essentially on a number of those corners have to, unless you're going to peer around the corner awkwardly, you are stepping out into the intersection to see if there is a vehicle approaching, and when they're doing so at speed, it is high risk. So I think just working through those, but I think that's primarily a design as opposed to a traffic control device area. Councillor Anderson, any questions?
I'm very supportive of where you're going here, and I'm just wondering about. So this will be going to council, and other people are going to see this and talk. So let's say I'm looking at just when I look at moving to one lane, and initially there were 2 lanes, and we're inserting trees and possibly seating and other man-made items. So for page 60, so if you're looking at the entry to Montgomery Square, the green circles with the little, are they seats, are they?
No, through the chair, they are trees, and I think the grey beneath them denotes the topsoil cell that will be supporting those trees. So those green circles are trees on the edge of the carriageway, separating the carriageway from the pedestrian way.
Okay, and what are the grain parallelograms? Is that just concrete?
Yeah, that's a change in surface. So the dark grey is an asphalt surface, and the lighter grey strips are an exposed aggregate concrete surface.
Okay, so again, I'm very supportive, but I'm just trying to figure out how I advocate this. I probably will have to talk about safety rather than something being aesthetically pleasing as far as some of the feedback I'm going to get. Thanks.
Any other questions? Just a final question from me, which is really around the decision-making process here. So we are adopting or approving the removal of the existing restrictions and controls and approving the proposed changes. What?
Yes, that's correct. And then there's a subsequent report coming to, I think, the 8th of August full council meeting that will be considering the tender and the process to proceed with the build on this project. And perhaps Mr. Laverdis might want to just talk to that to clarify.
So through the chair, it won't be coming through to council. It'll be going through the tender committee as per the delegations. And we're about to finalise the price, bring that to you. So this is just a series of dominoes that need to fall. We need to give effect to the changes, which will affect the pricing, which will then be finalised, and that'll go into the tender committee in August, yes.
So in terms of my question is really, we've got a lag time of 2 years between this decision and the physical built changes being complete in this area. Is this like a hard swap right now? And how do we navigate? Essentially, we're going to end up with a number of P120s that are still signposted as 120s that are technically P60s that we're just not enforcing as P60s.
So through the chair, the the new regulatory framework comes into effect when those signs and markings are in place.
And
So this is giving us the permission and the understanding that we will be doing that in the future. And when those signs and markings are put up, they effectively operationalise the changes.
and the removal of existing restrictions and controls, they only remove when the signs are removed.
Through the chair, that'll happen through the construction process, but we expect through the construction process that there'll be extensive temporary traffic management through the site to manage those activities.
I just mean, so tomorrow, if the proposed changes only take effect when those signs go up,
Yeah.
tomorrow, does the previous restrictions that we've just approved, that we're about to approve removing, stay in effect, or do we?
So the existing signs and markings stay in effect until they are removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're not.
So those things happen all
Yeah.
essentially at once. So when something's removed, it's no longer in effect. And then once the new signs come up, that's when those.
We're not creating
We're not creating a dead
regulatory
zone for a period of time. No.
Wonderful. With that, I'm happy to move these resolutions. Is there someone happy to second? Councillor Hodgson, any discussion or debate on these? I'd just say a massive thank you to the staff team. This is a part of a much larger project, and we often forget all of the technical detail that goes into all of these little things that are critical. But once they're in place, we often just take them as the natural order and forget the huge amount of work that goes into designing and ensuring that the layout of our streets is both safe, appropriate and effective. So just want to acknowledge the massive body of work and I'm very excited to see all this come into place. With that, unless Councillor Anderson has anything to say, I will put those resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those resolutions are carried, and that brings us to the end of our meeting. So I will close us off with karakia. Ka whakaria te tapu, kia watia aitiara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumie, huie, tai kie. Thank you, everybody.